Hello, everybody. Welcome here to the Prog Monster. My name is Murph. I am the host of this show, a show dedicated to progressive rock and other forms of rock music. I'm going to turn the volume up, make sure it's good here. Anyways, we're here tonight to do an episode of Into the Prog Universe, or Progverse if you prefer, in which I'm going to talk about my 10 favorite progressive rock artists that are keyboardists. Yes, the keyboardist's turn now. Is there any instrument that really is more indicative of progressive rock than the keyboards? Probably not. Maybe the flute has become a challenger lately, but I still think it's pretty much the keyboardist's realm. I do apologize if the sound is not so good, or maybe the picture is not as good as normal, because my MSI is awaiting a new charger, as I tripped over the charger and broke it out of the socket the other day. Yep. I knew it when it was sitting there. I said to myself, you better not leave it like that. You're going to trip over it and break it. And then I didn't do anything about it, and then I tripped over it and break it. I love a self-fulfilling prophecy. So tonight, of course, we're going to be talking progressive rock, which is the thing that matters most to me, or one of the things that matters most to me in this universe that we live in. I'm actually going to turn this slightly this way. Maybe that won't work either, because I'm getting a glare off of some of these here. Is it these ones? Yeah. So let's just get them out of there. We'll just remove them out of there for now. It's because of the light. We are doing a relocation of everything tomorrow to another aspect of the room that I think will be less involved for that to happen. But that's for tomorrow, not for today. So we're going to get on with it now. So basically, I'm going to be talking about those 10 progressive rock keyboardists that I picked out of my list. Quite a few here. So actually, this is one of the lists where I got a few guys in here that I've never really had in any kind of list before. And the reason being is that it's easy for a keyboardist to make a dent in my not so spectacular keyboard list. But I've picked out 10. I kind of put them in what I thought was a reasonable order for me to do this. Tried to go from my least favorite to my most favorite, which is what is normal for me, but I'm not sure I got it exactly, but it's good enough. Hello, everybody. I want to welcome you here. Welcome. What is it? Wimp Wounds? Is that how you say it? Okay, we'll go with that. Welcome to the channel. So we're going to be doing a progressive rock top 10 keyboardists for those of you just joining. So the first one on the list, we'll get right underway with it right away, is from this band, Greenslade. So these are their first two albums here. I have a compilation. I have another one, the other one as well, but this one I like quite a bit. Best thing about this band is the artwork here. So it's phenomenal artwork on these albums. All four of them. They get progressively better as it goes along. The artist, of course, is Roger Dean. For those of you who are not familiar with him, he's well known for his stuff with Yes. I can't imagine anybody is unfamiliar with Roger Dean's work, but he has done stuff with other bands, including Uriah Heep and Greenslade here as well. So this particular keyboardist, of course, this band has two keyboardists, but the one that I like, because I like his solo stuff as well, is David Greenslade. He is the main guy here, I believe, primarily his band. But this album also, or this band also has two keyboardists. So no guitar player, but two keyboardists. And in fact, I think the bass player also plays keyboards, if I'm not mistaken. Tony Reeves, I believe he does. I'm just looking here to see if he does. Yeah, he actually plays. There is no guitar on any of these albums, or at least not the first couple, anyways. Not these two. Um, they start using a guitar on the third album. Look at that! Isn't that amazing? Look at that cover, eh? Not the cat, the multi-armed, whatever that is. This is a solid band. If you, I'm guessing that if you like Emerson, Lake and Palmer, you're gonna like these guys. Not too much guitar, no guitar with these guys, but lots of keyboards. So there are two keyboardists on this album, or these albums, I should say. Dave Lawson and David Greenslade. So Dave Lawson also does the vocals. So um, the main keyboardist or the main guy is David Greenslade. Um, so they do this kind of twin keyboarding, something you don't see a lot of. Yeah, it's a really good. Um, so dominant are the keyboards on here. I don't know why, but for some reason I like these guys as opposed to. I'm not an Emerson, Lake and Palmer. Well, I can't say I dislike them. Certainly, I don't do that. I just don't really. Um, I just don't really listen to them pretty much. Where these guys I like a lot. They're maybe it's their music's a little bit more simplistic than the Emerson, Lake and Palmer stuff, and it tends to resonate a little bit more with me. So David Greenslade, he's one of the guys. So the next guy up on another Green album here, but vastly different sounding music, is Eloy. I just chose this album because it's the current one I'm listening to. Some really, really good stuff on here. Very heavy album and very Floyd-like, maybe more Floyd-like than Floyd. You know, there are some really like strong Floyd moments on these albums. Yep, very strong. I think Frank Borman, of course, is the main guy here. Been with them from the beginning and is still currently with them as well. But this is Detlev Smitchen. Smitchen. He's the keyboardist. Really good. He really gets the Floyd sound right down to the science. Not only that, it's heavier too. I think it's more like what you would get with some of the more heavier Floyd albums. This one has a lot of that Dark Side of the Moon sound. Of course it does, and you're not going to get if a guy they're going to imitate Pink Floyd, they're going to go for the best Pink Floyd, right? But this is very solid keyboarding. Um, Heavy album. The keyboards being very dominant on this album too. I think it's one of the more dominant instruments. You got that really kind of atmospheric keyboard sound going on. Lots of synthesizers too. Um, I wouldn't call this a symphonic rock album though. I don't think it qualifies. Maybe space rock might be another term you could use to describe it. Yeah. So this guy, Detlev, um, Schmitchen. Schmitchen, just excellent keyboardist, very good. So that's my number 9. So I guess we go to number 8 from another band that I like quite a bit. So you've seen 2 or 3 bands there that maybe are not so mainstream, but excellent keyboards. This band, no exception to that. This is Nectar. I chose this album. Could have probably chose Tab in the Ocean or one of the other earlier albums. Keyboards are fantastic. Taft Freeman here, he is absolutely killer. Very dominant. This is another band that's quite heavy. This album is heavy. I don't think it's as heavy as um, their second album in A Tab in the Ocean, but really solid keyboard parts. Um, as I said, very heavy, very atmospheric, um, spacey, and that's all. I think most of that's attributed to the keyboard. The guitar parts are really strong here too, um, giving it that real heavy sound. But the keyboards really give it that spacey feel at times throughout this album. Although I don't really think of this band as a space fan. They're not a band. They're not like Hawkwind or one of those bands. It's kind of spacey. Generally speaking, I would say they're more like prog metal in some ways. Definitely can't rule out that early kind of prog metal sound. It's kind of ironic that some of their stuff, maybe not so much on this album, that has been played by other bands and heavier bands too, more metalish type bands. So Taft Freeman there. Next up, going in a complete different direction here. So this is prog, but it's more of a poppy sound prog. Um, and I chose this album because it was the album that broke them in with me. I still like it a lot, and I think the reason I like this a lot is because of the piano. The piano with this band, Rick Davies here. He's a great piano player, and really the dominant factor on this album, I think, is the keyboards, and I think he's the dominant keyboards. Roger Hodgson's a good keyboardist, but I think of him more as a guitar player and a vocalist than I do as a keyboardist, even though I know he does play some keyboards too. But the piano parts here are the dominant part with this album, and that's all Rick Davies pretty much. And this album, of course, was a mega smash hit. But they have some of that more piano-y stuff on some of their other albums too. Crime of the Century, all of them, all of the albums have lots of great piano playing, and I would say dominates their music quite a bit. Some real catchy music, a lot more poppy than a lot of prog bands would be. I never even actually think of these guys as prog. I think of them as pop music primarily, but they're not your standard pop music either. So, yeah, a little bit of a, I mean, more of a 50-50 split. And you got some bluesy stuff going on as well here. So, Rick Davies of the Supertramp, sorry. So he would be my number 6, right? Are we that far down? No, number 7, sorry. So the next one up, of course, Richard Wright. You couldn't have a progressive rock list without this guy in it. Not so much for his lead abilities, I don't think, or his dynamic, frontal assault. This guy adds the atmosphere to the band, really, I think. Pink Floyd's kind of a spacey, kind of a proggy, kind of a psychedelic band, and the keyboards play a dominant part of that, although the lead guitar part is very strong as well. Actually, all of the instruments play a large percentage on this album, but I think the keyboards give it that kind of spacey, atmospheric. This is a in the dark album. Listening to it in the dark, and the keyboards are the reason I'm listening to it. It's just absolutely kind of mind numbing, this album. And you could go on to Wish You Were Here or Animals, or even as far up as The Wall, maybe go back a little bit to Adam Hart Mother, and you still have a lot of that keyboard ability. And that's why, to me, this guy is very dominating. Richard Wright of Pink Floyd. So next guy up, we're getting into the guys who I really like a lot, the top 5. The guy from this band, most people would not know. Most people probably don't even know this band. I'm going to move up a little bit because I'm a little bit too far back. Prefer my other computer for this, has a bigger screen on it, but you got to do with what you got to do, right? So the next band out is called Warbler. I chose their album that's currently in my playlist. Lars Fredrik Frosley. Now this guy absolutely has that 1970s, early 1970s style down with all the different instruments, the mellotron, the organ, even the church organ, and the piano at times too. A little bit of just playing keyboards and lots of synthesizer. Yeah, definitely. But I wouldn't say it's dominated by synthesizer. That's one of the things about this band I like. They're not synthesizer driven. It's keyboard driven. And the keyboardist, Lars Frederick Frosley. He is just absolutely great. I think for myself, I think he's probably the best member of this band, the most dominating member of this band, and he just really knows how to play not only the solo parts but that background stuff as well that keyboards are often knows from. So they have like 5 studio albums. This one's the most recent, I believe. I think it's the most recent from 2020. I'm hoping that we'll get another one from them before long. Um, Love this band. Love this keyboardist. Love most of the sound of this very yes-like, very yes-like. So moving on up to the number 5 guy, or in this no number 4 guy. Sorry. So now we're getting into really my favorite keyboardists. So is there anybody in the keyboard world, at least in the prog world, that is better than this guy, Kerry Minier? Not only is he a dominant keyboardist, which he is, he also plays all kinds of different other instruments, guitars. I've seen him play cello. I've seen him play um, vibraphone. Yeah, he just plays it all. Plays it all very well too. An excellent musician in every stretch of the word. Dominating this band with all of his different sounds. This is a very multi-instrumental band with lots of stuff going on, but nobody more stronger than Kerry Minier. I think maybe the most dominant character on this group, at least musically. Maybe not so much personality wise. He's a little bit more laid back than the rest of some of the other members of the band, but he's definitely amazing in a lot of ways. I just find it a shame that they only put out the 10 albums, because this guy could have been absolutely a legend. So far as I'm concerned, he is. But for a lot of people who don't really follow this band, they may not even know who he is. This is one of their better albums. I think they're actually a better live band than they are on album, and their albums are quite good. But when you watch them live, you really get an appreciation for all of the stuff they can do, all the different instruments they can do. They may play 3 or 4 songs, and every single one of them play a different instrument on every single song. Nobody does that. Nobody has that ability. Um, this particular album, recorded in July 3rd, 1976. At least the live part for the last song, Just the Same, which is one of their best live songs. They just play everything on here. And to be quite honest with you, I think Kerry Minier actually plays a little bit of guitar, some keyboards, and the xylophone all on this one track. It's absolutely killer keyboardist. So get to the top 3, probably the guys I'm most familiar with, listened to the longest. These 3 I've listened to the longest. I've listened to all of their stuff, and there's no shortage of good stuff with these 3. So next up is Dennis DeYoung of Styx. Many people don't even think of him really as a keyboardist, but because his vocals and his stage presence are so strong that people forget often that he was also their keyboardist, and a damn good one too. Lots of really good stuff. Both soloing and backupping. He could do all of it. Of course, he is more prone to be the vocalist, as one of 3 lead vocalists in the band, but maybe the best of the 3. I'm not going to argue. Definitely my favorite song, Queen of Spades, is his vocals, and he's just amazing on that. But it's his keyboards. I like the song The Message too, which is more of a keyboard part, the same as Aku Aku. There's a little bit of a keyboard part, more of a synthesizer part, I would probably say. But his keyboard abilities are maybe not as gifted a keyboardist as some of the other ones on this list, but iconically playing those iconic, memorable keyboard parts, he's one of the best at that. I mean, you've got songs like Come Sail Away, which is not on this album. It's on their Grand Illusion album. The keyboard part in that is very dominant indeed. Yeah, I like a lot of the stuff he does. Yeah, just a flamboyant keyboardist. Yeah, okay, well, they're all kind of that way, aren't they? Some more than others, but not many more than him, that's for sure. So yeah, lots of stick stuff has a promination of keyboards on them. And the funny part about that is that the keyboard parts um, are the more dominant parts in many cases, even the solos. Although these guys have great guitar players and a great rhythm section, but the keyboard I think is the instrument that kind of sets them apart from a lot of hard rock bands. Styx is Dennis D. Young. Okay, the next the next one up, I not a personal favorite of this guy. Like I don't love this guy. I love his keyboard ability. I kind of have a little bit of misgivings about him because of the treatment of their guitar player on this band. We're talking, of course, about Genesis, but other than that, and he is definitely the leader of the band. Not at this point, but eventually he becomes leader of the band, and was, you know, a kind of serious opposition to Peter Gabriel when Peter Gabriel was a member of the band. But the keyboard parts are so memorable here. All you have to do is listen to "Supper's Ready." Is there a better, more iconic sounding keyboard song than that? Except for maybe Cinema. Uh, I'm drawing a blank. Sorry. Yeah, he's just so damn good on lots of keyboards. Even the piano parts he does are good, and he made it so that most of the keyboard parts were pushed forward. Um, oh, hey Mega, Wade, thanks for joining us here. I think you were here last time too, I believe. Anyways, yep, absolutely a killer keyboard, and there's like the piano parts, like on Can Utility and the Coastliners. Just amazing. Watchers of the Sky, of course, with that massive organ at the beginning, really setting it. But the soloing on Supper's Ready, amazing. And you could do this with just about all of the Genesis stuff, and you could find some absolutely amazing. Oh, Cinema Show was the show I was trying to think of too. I love the keyboards on that, and are probably among my favorite keyboards on any song by Genesis, and among my favorite by any group. Period. Yeah, just absolutely killer. So many good things. Tony Banks, right, or Anthony Banks, if you prefer. And then, of course, we should get to the number one guy, and then we'll talk a little bit about overall the keyboards in this genre. Um, is there any doubt who this is going to be? Rick Wakeman. Mostly his solo stuff, also a lot of Yes, ABWH as well. Um, the guy was the one of the kings of that kind of keyboard stacks that you used to see on stage. He can play all of those instruments so well too. I kind of think of when I think of Rick Wakeman, I think of the solos. I think of the harpsichord. I think of the mellotron, and I think of the organ, especially the church organ. He's absolutely killer on all of those. Not so. He does play the synthesizers, yes, and that's the reason why they got him, because Tony Kaye, who's quite a good keyboardist himself, didn't really like the synthesizers and didn't want to play them, but they wanted to go in that direction, so they chose him for that. But is there anybody with faster fingers on a keyboard than him? Yes, I know what's coming. The one guy who I didn't mention in my list because I don't really follow them, so it's difficult to talk about somebody's abilities when you're not really following them that closely. And we're talking about, of course, Keith Emerson. He was going to be an honorable mention, but since we brought him up now, we can do that now. There's no real set way of doing this live stream stuff, but yeah, some of the best, my best and most favorite keyboard parts, um, Close to the Edge, the solo and Close to the Edge. Maybe not the best keyboard solo of all time, but definitely one of the most memorable. Same thing with um, from the Fragile album, a couple of different stuff on there, but of course, the solo on a song "Who I Know," but I'm drawing a blank again. It's always the worst on Fridays. I'm always the tiredest. Roundabout, of course, yeah. The solo on Roundabout, fantastic. I love the epic sound that you get on Awaken, which is on the Going for the One album. A lot of the stuff that he does on this is just fast paced, but also on the Journey to the Center of the Earth, which is more atmospheric and more orchestratal. Just fantastic stuff on that as well. And he's still releasing albums. He's got probably close to 100 albums now, or it seems to me like he does. So I would say he's easily my favorite keyboardist. Now, some of the people who I didn't mention that should be mentioned here, of course, the first one of those would be Keith Emerson. The only reason I didn't include Keith Emerson in this list is because I don't really listen to Emerson, Lake and Palmer. I've never really listened to the Nice. I don't have a problem with Keith Emerson, but I just don't listen to that music. So to talk about something extensively that you don't listen to doesn't seem to make much sense. So that's the only reason why I didn't bring him up. And of course, other people, Gary Booker from, now I can't remember them either. Another really good piano player. I like solid, really good piano players. Elton John, of course, comes in there. There's some stuff on a lot of the King Crimson stuff that's really good as well. I don't think it's just any one guy with that band. There's a whole bunch of different people playing Mellotron on that as well, which is quite good. Anybody want to mention anybody, they're free to jump in and mention whatever they want to mention. I do like a lot of keyboards. I would say of the major instruments in most rock bands, I would say the keyboardist is probably my least favorite, but not because I think it's less than any of the other instruments. It's just that I also like rock and hard rock and heavy metal, and those instruments are much more dominant there. So I've gotten to listen to a lot more of that than I have of the keyboards, but I do like keyboards quite a bit. You get a good keyboardist in a prog band, he can really make a big, huge difference. Even Caravan, I like their kind of quirky uses of the keyboards. Just some really quirky sounds to their music. There's lots of other bands. Hawkwind, they do use keyboards. It's not as dominant an instrument with them, but the synthesizers are more dominant with a band like Hawkwind because they want more of that spacey kind of feel to their music. Bands like Jade Warrior, which is a band that maybe not as well known, but have some really good, interesting keyboard sounds and a lot of different instruments actually with them. They're a band that has a fairly wide range of stuff. Of course, the keyboards and the piano parts, of course, for Atomic Rooster, can't really overlook them. Although I don't really think of them as a prog band. More, I know some bands people do, and maybe they are proggy, but I think of them a little bit more as a psychedelic bluesy band with some prog overtures in their music, but still really solid stuff. IQ and a lot of those, what they call the second wave or the neo-prog bands of the 80s, pretty atmospheric type of keyboards and synthesizers used there to create that neo-prog sound. Some really good stuff there. I like the keyboardists with IQ, very good. Same with Marillion and North Star, Pendragon, Palace, Solstice. You could go on. They all have decent, good keyboard sounds to their music. I don't follow their keyboardists as much because they're still relatively new to me, even though I've got 4 or 5 IQ albums now and all of the Marillion that I really want, and some that I don't really follow. Yeah, so some really good keyboardists amongst those types of bands as well. If you enjoy that neo-prog sound, there's a little bit of that kind of goes on, a little bit more modern stuff where people have kind of tried to follow their leads. Things like Drifting Sun, another good band that way. I do like some of the more modern kind of um, prog stuff that came out in this century, because a lot of those bands have tried to emulate those early prog bands as well, or at least the sound of them, anyways. And that's really a good thing. Things like Porcupine Tree, and even now I'm drawing up like, oh, Spock's Beard, another one like that, Transatlantic. All these bands have some excellent keyboard sounds to their music as well. Oh yeah, of course, Manfred Mann. Can't forget that. I don't really think of them as a prog band, but I know where you're coming from with this. Yeah, they've got some excellent stuff on there, especially with their piano too. I like the piano with them. So, what other bands should we talk about? The only thing about, unfortunately, the only bad thing for Genesis is that, as good as he is a keyboardist and a dominant part of this band, I think he kind of suppressed Steve Hackett a little bit too much, and in some ways I found even Phil Collins's drumming was kind of backgroundish at times early on in the band, which is a little bit of a shame, to be honest with you. This band, though, is the band with the most instrumentation of anybody. And, if you like multiple different types of instrumentation, you're not going to find any band better than this. The other thing about this band is it's very good at organizing those instruments into very kind of complex rhythm and beats, which I don't think anybody really does as well as them. Well, maybe Yes does, maybe King Crimson, but I find King Crimson maybe not as much. When I think of being a little bit out there, so I kind of think of Yes and Genesis as being a little bit more mainstream, maybe a little bit to the right of mainstream in the prog world, and then you got like Caravan and Camel a little bit further out, and then maybe Gentle Giant further out than them, and then you've got King Crimson or Floyd, maybe a little bit less further out. Maybe you got like Camel, and then Floyd and Eloy, and then you got Gentle Giant, and then maybe the way the hell out there is King Crimson. To me, they're the farthest right and the hardest band to get into. Every single one of their albums that I listened to has taken me weeks and weeks just to appreciate it. And perhaps that's the reason why I don't choose them as much for stuff, because their music is very complex, maybe even more so than even Gentle Giant. But this is a band too that if you really like a lot of keyboards, some people prefer a lot of keyboards and less guitar. Some people prefer more guitar and a lot less keyboards. But if you like a lot of keyboards, this is a band you should follow. Greenslade. They've got two excellent keyboardists here and no guitar players. So that's all keyboards and no guitar at all. So excellent stuff there. Crimson. Is it Marlin? Crimson is a very difficult band to get into. It took me almost 40 years before I got into the first album. And then I liked the first two albums right away after I got into that one. And then Lizards was kind of an offsetter for me. And then I liked Lark's Tongues and Aspic, which is actually their fifth album, but I played it fourth. And now I'm currently on Islands, which I'm finding is hard to get into as well as Lizards was, maybe more so. So, and I've got half a dozen other ones that I'm eventually going to get into. Hopefully it'll be a lot more interesting. I just, for some reason, I find Islands and Lizards both very kind of different. To me, it doesn't really sound like rock music. But then I thought that same way about Atom Heart Mother too. I didn't think that was really rock music till I listened to it for a while. The one band that I've neglected to talk about at all is a band called Griffin. Now, Griffin, Jethro Tull, a lot of similarities between these. Are a lot more folky elements into the music, more medieval sounds in their music than a lot of what you would call solid progressive rock bands. Jethro Tull, of course, like um, has a real multitude of different sounds mixed together. Probably do that better than anybody. But Griffin, very medievalish sounding music. I mean, for sure, their first album isn't rock, but everything after that gets more and more progressive. But again, a lot of multiple instrumentation on there, maybe, and some really kind of strange instruments too. So, something like Caravan with their oboes, right? Yeah, Saga is. A lot of people really like Saga. I think of Saga and Kansas as being North American progressive rock. But I don't really think of either of them as progressive rock bands, even though I know they are. I think of Saga as more of a kind of new wave-ish kind of hard rock, and Kansas is just me, more of a straight hard rock band with some prog elements, and the same with Saga, kind of a new wave-ish kind of hard rock band with some prog elements in their music. I do like the vocalist in Saga and the ones in Kansas quite a bit. That may be my favorite parts of both of those bands. Don't really follow either of them. Maybe a little more Kansas than Saga. I did like Saga quite a bit when I was younger, but I kind of moved away from that sound and not really followed it much over the last decade or two. Yeah, maybe shame on me, but you can only like what you like. If you're listening to stuff you don't like, I got to be asking you, why are you doing it? Like, music is meant to be enjoyed, and if you're not really liking it, why are you trying to do it? Just so you can say you did it? I'm not one of those. I don't do those kind of things. So I listen to what I like. If it catches me and I start to like it, yeah, that's happened several times over the last few years. Happened with Gentle Giant, happened with the Doors, happened with there's a couple of others that I'm not thinking of right now. Well, Camel was another one. I didn't initially like them. I didn't initially like Caravan. I didn't even actually. If you go back in history, my musical history, I didn't really like Pink Floyd at first. I didn't like them at all. I didn't like The Wall, and I didn't want to listen to a band that I thought all their music was going to sound like The Wall and want nothing to do with it. So I kind of abandoned them for decades too, until I discovered that all their music doesn't sound like The Wall, and so I've grown. They've grown on me. Same with Jethro Tull. I didn't initially like them either. In fact, I did despise them initially because I didn't like that song Aqualung. But they've grown on me too. Part of that is my age has changed the way I think about music, and part of it was too different for me at the time. The same with Gentle Giant. I didn't initially like their first album I got from them. I tried listening to it, and I would listen to it, and then I say, why am I listening to this? I don't even like it. And then I finally discovered an opening for them. King Crimson's another band like I didn't initially like them either. The only progressive bands that I initially liked right away were both Yes and Rush. Those were the two. I did like Genesis, but I, for some reason, didn't go back and listen to their older stuff until much later. Yeah, I could say shame on you for not liking Gentle Giant, but I won't, because I agree with what you just said. They're quirky and maybe too far out there for some people. But once you get into them, you'll discover that they are arguably the best progressive rock band out there as far as multiple instrumentation and complex arrangements. Can't think of a band that's, other than Yes, can't really say there isn't a band that is as complex as them and as multi-instrument. Nobody plays as many instruments, that's for sure. They've got albums where they play like 60 some instruments on. Nobody's doing that anywhere. Even Griffin, who has a lot of different instruments, they don't play as many as they do. A lot of people don't like Griffin. I think the reason being is that it's very medievalish sounding. At least the early stuff. That's part of the stuff I really like, but it requires a taste. It's like Scotch, it takes some time to really for it to grow on you. But it's I love it now, but I can see a lot of people say they're very boring. They don't like them. They sound boring. I can understand why they might think that way. I personally, I like them a lot. They're a band. It's difficult to find their albums, so that's maybe why they don't get to be as popular as some of these other progressive bands whose albums are readily found in every store you go to where they sell that kind of stuff. Or if you want to go online and listen to it, it's easy to find. I tend to be more of an album-driven guy, so I don't really listen to the radio, and I don't really follow stuff too much online, other than if I'm researching somebody. I'll try to listen to all of their stuff at once. I'm going to do a show in a few weeks called The Whole Apple, in which I've picked a band. The band's called Live. It's a band that was given to me by somebody on the channel. So I'm going to listen to all their stuff, and then I'm going to do a live episode called All the Apple to talk a little bit about that band. So The Whole Apple will be a show that I'll do probably once a month, in which I will pick a band that I don't know and haven't listened to before, try to listen to all their stuff, and then try to talk about it on a live stream. And then maybe people will show up and give me a little talk about it too, join in. That's what it's all about, getting everybody to talk about the stuff. We don't get enough of that. Well, at least I don't get enough of it. Most of the stuff I've learned is from the YouTube community here with the progressive rock and just basically rock channels in general and chat channels in general about rock. I do like some of the actual channels that play music where they'll pick an album and they'll score it and put it on. I do like that too, but I don't listen to that. I can do that with my own albums. I don't really need them to do it for me. But I guess there's a lot of people that prefer that because then they don't have to own all this stuff, where I tend to be a bit of a collector of stuff. So it's easy for me to do it that way. So I'm going to give you my my list here again. This time I'll give it to you in descending order, just in case some of you joined late and didn't get to see it. So Rick Wakeman was my number one guy. My number two guy was Tony Banks. Number three, Dennis D. Young. I was wondering about putting Dennis on here because I don't really think of Styx as a prog band, although there's enough prog in here you couldn't really argue with it. Number four, Gentle Giants, Kerry Menier. Number five, this is Lars Fredrik Frolsli of Wobbler, excellent keyboardist. Richard Wright is number six. Number seven, Rick Davies of Supertramp. You could probably throw Hodgson in there too, but I tend to think of him more as a vocalist than a guitarist. Nectar's Taff Freeman. Alan Taff Freeman, sorry. You got Svedlin Schmidtchen from Eloy, excellent keyboardist as well. And then, of course, David Greenslade. And if you like David Lawson, you can throw him in there too, both of Greenslade. So Greenslade is a double keyboardist band. You don't get many of those out there. But I tend to like guitar, so it's kind of unusual for me that Greenslade only has the two keyboardists, at least their early stuff. They start playing more guitar on their later stuff. And they're a band whose albums seem to get better. Each one is a little better than the other. Now, they did release one much later in their career. They got back together and released one. I didn't care for that one as much. Maybe I'm just not, my ear isn't tuned to it yet. It might take a little bit for me to get to it. So those are my top 10 favorite progressive rock keyboardist with a whole host of others that I threw in there because they have to be. You can't not mention them. So, anyways, I hope you've all enjoyed this episode. I'm going to try to do more of this. Um, Eventually, once I get very comfortable with getting the right computer set up, the right area set up, and I may have a couple of guests on board to do kind of more of a discussion, which I think will be more interesting. Instead of just listening to my boring voice, you can listen to a couple of other boring voices too. And I hope you've enjoyed this episode. We will be back. We will be back next week with another episode. Now, I think next week's episode, we are going to do vocalists, progressive rock vocalists. This is not going to be, well, actually, it'll be probably very difficult, but there might be a few vocalists on here that surprise people too. So, anyways, I hope to see you all then. So, have yourself a good night and enjoy the rest of the evening. And we will see you next Friday with another episode. So, take care and goodbye.